As the final bell rang, Bonsuke Hirano stepped out of the school building, his heart still racing from everything that had happened. His friends crowded around him, laughing and talking excitedly about the anonymous love confession he had received. "It's like a dream come true," they teased. Hirano felt his face heat up with embarrassment, overwhelmed by all the attention. Just then, he remembered something important he had left behind in the classroom. "Go on without me. I'll catch up," he said, waving them off as he ran back down the hallway. The excitement quickly turned into urgency as he approached his classroom. Suddenly, he stopped. He heard a soft rustling sound coming from inside. Curious, he slowly moved closer to the window and peeked in. His heart nearly stopped. Standing alone in the classroom was Kokuru Goinda, the most beautiful girl in school. She was famous for her cold attitude and for rejecting anyone who confessed to her. Startled, Hirano quickly ducked down so she wouldn't see him. He watched her quietly as she moved around the room with calm confidence. Her presence was both beautiful and intimidating. Why is she here? He wondered. And why my classroom? His confusion deepened when he saw her walk straight to his desk. She sat down and gently ran her fingers over its surface, as if she were searching for something special. Hirano's heart pounded. Had they ever even spoken before? The idea that she might like him felt impossible. Still, he couldn't stop wondering. Goinda then opened her bag and pulled out a large object. For a brief moment, panic hit him. A bomb. But he quickly calmed himself, remembering that girls often carried strange or cute things. That's when he noticed a small stuffed bear hanging from her bag. She carefully untied a ribbon from the bear and wrapped it around the large object. Hirano watched, confused and nervous. Then she gently kissed the object. His mind froze. It was a gift. She placed the wrapped ball onto his desk and Hirano stared in shock as Kokuru Goinda struggled to fit the large ball inside the desk. His thoughts spiraled. This was the first time a girl had ever given him a gift, and not just any girl, but the most beautiful girl in school. At the same time, he felt a little sad. It looked like she might ruin the gift while forcing it in. Goinda frowned in concentration as she pushed harder, and Hirano couldn't help but find her struggle strangely cute. He quickly shook his head, snapping out of it. He shouldn't just stand there staring. She finally seemed to realize the ball wouldn't fit that way. Hirano felt relieved, until she suddenly dumped all the books out of the desk and tried again with even more force. He nearly gasped, silently praying for his poor desk. Then she pulled out what looked like a weapon. His heart jumped, until he realized it was his recorder. Before he could process what was happening, she slammed it down, breaking it in half. Hirano felt a sharp pain in his chest, but his confusion grew when she started using the broken pieces like tools, as if she were practicing martial arts on his desk. She carefully wrapped the broken recorder in her handkerchief. Hirano felt the urge to comfort her and tell her it was okay. What surprised him most was how hard she was trying. Why didn't she just use his locker or shoe rack? He glanced over and froze. Both his locker and shoe rack were completely destroyed. When he looked back, Goinda was still working on the desk. Instead of feeling angry, Hirano felt admiration. He had always thought someone like her lived in a different world. Right now, she looked almost divine in her determination. Suddenly, a teacher appeared in the hallway. Hirano's heart raced as the loud voice startled him. Panicking, he turned back toward the classroom and saw Kokuru Goinda leap out the window. The teacher reached him and smacked a paper onto his head, scolding him for not paying attention. After the lecture, Hirano entered the classroom. His heart was still pounding. He picked up the gift from his desk and looked outside just in time to see Goinda running away. He carefully unwrapped the gift. His eyes widened. "Is this the ball you lost during class?" the teacher asked, breaking the silence. Hirano didn't answer. All he could think about was how kind Kokuru Goinda had been. Later, sitting by the window, his friends excitedly told him to look outside. The sunlight blinded him for a moment. "You're so lucky. You get to see Goinda every day," they said. Hirano smiled softly, watching her from afar. Everyone admired her beauty, but he knew something more. Beneath her cold exterior was a kind and caring heart. Lost in thought, his friend nudged him. "Let's watch Goinda's club practice after school. It's a great chance to get closer to her." Before Hirano could respond, the teacher overheard them. "Today is committee assignment day," the teacher announced firmly. "No one is leaving when the bell rings." With that, the professor left the classroom, leaving the class representative in charge of the committee assignments. The representative stepped up to the podium and looked around the room. "Is anyone interested in joining the disciplinary committee?" A heavy silence filled the classroom. Everyone stared down at their desks, avoiding eye contact. Bonsuke Hirano felt a wave of anxiety. He had no desire to join any committee. He just wanted to go home. Out of the 35 students in class, only 13 would be free from committee duty, so he decided to wait and hope for the best. As time passed, doubts crept into his mind. What if I get picked? He imagined losing all his free time after school. Worse, he pictured a strict committee member, maybe even a girl, nagging him nonstop about his responsibilities. He imagined being scolded during meetings and teased for being careless. He shook his head, trying to clear those thoughts, but they refused to fully disappear. Then a different thought surfaced. What if someone wants me to raise my hand? A small smile appeared on his face as he seriously considered joining. But another question followed. Which committee should I even choose? The pet committee appealed to him because he loved animals. The recycling committee also sounded easy. The athletic committee, however, was impossible. He wasn't athletic at all, and watching his strong classmates reminded him how intense sports activities were. The class representative called again for disciplinary committee volunteers. To Hirano's surprise, Zima raised her hand. The classroom erupted in cheers, even though she looked reluctant. Hirano frowned. Why didn't anyone volunteer earlier? Then another student, Sarum, raised his hand. The class representative smiled brightly at the sight of a handsome boy joining. Something felt strange. Next came the health committee, which needed 2 boys and 2 girls. 4 hands shot up instantly. The same thing happened with the cleanup committee. Hirano's suspicion grew. Students who had stayed silent earlier now groaned in disappointment. Something was clearly going on. Then the library committee was announced. Suddenly, something struck Hirano's desk and rolled toward him. He picked it up and froze. It was a ball of ice. Confused, he looked up. It was a bright, sunny day. Ice made no sense. He glanced out the window and spotted Kokuru Goinda hiding in the bushes with a slingshot. She fired again, hitting another student and forcing a girl to raise her hand for the library committee. Hirano was stunned, but at the same time he felt relieved. The committees were being decided very quickly. Is she trying to speed things up for me? He wondered. He immediately shook his head. No way, she's doing this for everyone. Even though Goinda's methods were extreme, Hirano couldn't deny her kindness. When the pet committee was announced, he excitedly raised his hand. Smack! An ice ball hit his face. He yelped and pulled his hand down instantly. The class representative moved on to the athletic committee. Hirano kept his hand down, afraid of what Goinda might do next. Smack! Another ice ball hit him, and his hand shot up on its own. Panic flooded his mind. She must hate me for watching her the other day. This is her punishment. The thought of being stuck on a committee, especially one like this, felt terrible. Then Gorisuji, the biggest guy in class, raised his hand too. Relief washed over Hirano. Great, he's perfect for it. Hirano tried to lower his hand, but another ice ball hit him, forcing it back up. He noticed Gorisuji was also being hit, but he didn't react at all. Hirano silently cheered for him. He can take it. He's strong. But Goinda wasn't done. She pulled out a much larger ice ball and bombarded Gorisuji until he finally gave in. Hirano was stunned by the absurd scene. He tried to lower his hand again, but that only earned him more ice balls. At last, the class representative made it official. Bonsuke Hirano and Tomoda will be members of the athletic committee. After class, Hirano stood in the hallway with Tomoda, who complained nonstop about how exhausting committee work would be. Hirano only nodded, deep in thought. Goinda really must hate me, he thought, even though he had never meant any harm. At their first athletic committee meeting, they were scolded for being late. Hirano barely heard it. All he could focus on was the fact that Kokuru Goinda was sitting right next to him. His heart raced. Usually after class, students were finally free to relax, laugh, and enjoy themselves. But today was different. Hirano was stuck in another long meeting surrounded by sleepy students. He wished he had never joined the athletic committee. In contrast, Goinda looked completely comfortable, as if she didn't mind these meetings at all. That made Hirano wonder, did she push me into this so we could be together every day? His imagination ran wild, picturing himself with Goinda after school, tripping, falling, and somehow landing on top of her. In his daydream, she looked at him with a teasing smile and asked if he wanted to get closer. To his own surprise, he imagined himself rejecting her. He felt annoyed that she had caught him off guard like that. Lost in his thoughts, Hirano almost shouted out loud, but stopped himself just in time. His mind stayed focused on Goinda. What did getting closer even mean? Kissing? Something else? His face grew warm as strange thoughts filled his head. He quickly shook them away, but he couldn't deny how bold Goinda was. Somehow, she had made the athletic committee seem a little more interesting. Trying to calm himself, he spun a pencil between his fingers, but it fell. He tried again. It failed every time. Frustrated, he almost begged the pencil to spin just once. Then he noticed something. A pencil was spinning perfectly. Hirano turned his head and saw Kokuru Goinda calmly twirling a pencil in her hand. His eyes widened. She moved smoothly, switching techniques with ease, completely absorbed in what she was doing. Her arm trembled slightly. Then he noticed her whole body shaking from the effort. Suddenly, with a flick of her wrist, she threw the pencil. Hirano gasped. The pencil flew in a perfect circle around the teacher's head and returned to Goinda's hand. She caught it without even looking. Then she pulled out 2 more pencils and began spinning all 3 at once. She didn't drop a single one. Hirano stared in awe. It felt like watching a circus act. She could show this to the world, he thought, completely mesmerized. In the background, the teacher announced that the meeting was over. Hirano didn't hear a word. His eyes were fixed on Goinda. He noticed she was using one pencil as support to spin the others, and he admired her creativity. The teacher left the classroom. Goinda stopped spinning. Hirano thought she might have glanced his way, but he quickly dismissed it as his imagination. Then she walked straight toward his desk. His heart nearly burst. His thoughts ran wild. Is she going to confess? But reality crushed his fantasy. She placed a pencil into his hand and spoke calmly. I'm Kokuru Goinda. With that, she turned and walked out. Hirano and the rest of the class stared after her in silence. His mind spun. Did she introduce herself because we're on the same committee? Or worse, was it because she saw me failing to spin my pen? The thought embarrassed him deeply. He knew it had to be a misunderstanding. There was no way Goinda had feelings for him. She was kind, yes, but he felt she probably saw him as just another first-year student. Outside the classroom, Goinda leaned against the wall, looking frustrated and disappointed. She wished she had spent more time with him. When school finally ended, Hirano stepped outside and froze. It was raining. He groaned quietly, regretting not bringing an umbrella or borrowing one earlier. As he stood there thinking, he heard voices approaching. It was Goinda and her friends, chatting happily about the sudden rain. Panicking, Hirano quickly hid behind a wall, hoping they wouldn't notice him. Too late. One of Goinda's friends spotted him and walked over. The girls surrounded him, laughing as they noticed how nervous he looked. Hirano's face burned with embarrassment. One girl grabbed his arm and compared their heights, teasing him for being short. His mind briefly drifted to how soft her arm felt, but he snapped back when she suddenly said, I have a great idea. Panic hit him. Are they going to mess with me even more? Instead, the girl turned to Goinda and asked her to lend Hirano her extra umbrella. The girls waved goodbye, saying they were heading to cooking class. Hirano waved back, relieved. Smack. An umbrella hit the side of his face. He rubbed his cheek and thanked Goinda awkwardly. For a moment, he wondered if she had hit him out of jealousy, but he quickly corrected himself. No, she's just being kind. I'm sorry for bothering you, he said, promising to wash and return the umbrella. He opened it. It was torn, almost unusable. That somehow felt very Goinda-like. Just as relief washed over him, she winked and pulled out another umbrella. But his hope faded quickly. That one was torn too. Then another, and another. Every umbrella she pulled out was broken. Hirano stared at her bag, wondering if it was filled with damaged umbrellas or holes. He didn't complain, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she might be teasing him. When he reached for the next umbrella, Goinda held onto it. Sorry, he said nervously. Instead of answering, she gently touched his arm. His heart raced. Before he realized what was happening, they were walking together under the same umbrella. Hirano couldn't believe it. He pinched himself, unsure if this was real. As they walked side by side, he noticed her long eyelashes and clear skin. She looked delicate and beautiful up close. Overwhelmed by everything, Hirano felt completely confused. As he took another step forward, Bonsuke Hirano accidentally bumped into her. For a split second, he froze, nearly jumping back in shock. Before he could react, Kokuru Goinda quickly grabbed his arm and pulled him closer. His face turned bright red. He looked away at once, trying to escape the awkward moment. He kept telling himself that this was a bad situation, but Goinda seemed completely calm. Hirano didn't know where to look. Their bodies were too close, and no matter how hard he tried, his eyes betrayed him. He accidentally caught a glimpse of her undergarments, and his thoughts went wild. It took him a moment to realize why. Her clothes were soaked from the rain. I'm sorry, I didn't notice earlier, he stammered, his heart pounding. Then he noticed something strange. A beautiful red line appeared briefly on her skin, then vanished. Just as he felt disappointed, it appeared again, then disappeared once more. Confused, Hirano watched as Goinda showed him a small board covered with a red blackout sheet. Only then did he understand how powerful that tool was. The next day, Hirano stayed after class to help his teacher. The teacher smiled, clearly pleased. It's no problem, Hirano replied, but his mind was elsewhere. He didn't tell anyone the real reason he stayed late. His thoughts were still stuck on what had happened with Goinda. Walking through the hallway, he tried to convince himself that she was simply being kind, nothing more. Still, no matter how hard he tried, those thoughts wouldn't leave his head. He decided to avoid her for now, but it seemed Goinda wasn't done with him. When he peeked into his classroom, his heart sank. She was already there, standing quietly as if she had been waiting for him. He had hoped staying late would give him some peace. Instead, she stood there, just as beautiful as ever. He told himself it was just the lighting playing tricks on his mind. Surely, if he looked again with a clear head, it would feel different. But when he looked again, she was still there, calm, composed, and impossible to ignore. Hirano struggled to control his thoughts, especially since Goinda's friends were with her. All three girls were wearing aprons. He realized they must have just come from cooking class. He overheard one of them asking Goinda if she wanted to do something personal. His eyes drifted to his bag on the desk. Suddenly, one of her friends gently pushed Goinda forward. She stepped closer, holding something in her hand. Hirano recognized it as some kind of gift, but he quickly told himself she was just being nice. For a moment, though, he let his imagination run free. Then his thoughts jumped to something ridiculous, imagining her as an assassin sent to kill him. He blinked. In her hand was a shiny, star-shaped object, glowing softly in the dim classroom. She looked like a character from a video game. His first instinct was fear, but then Goinda gently kissed the object. A gift? That made much more sense. After all, no one kisses a weapon. She looked completely relaxed as she opened his bag. Hirano felt nervous, wondering what she was doing. When he checked inside, he saw nothing strange and relaxed slightly. Then he noticed something new. Inside his bag was the shiny star-shaped ball. He stared at it, confused. How did it get there? What was she doing? And what did it mean for him? The ball didn't fit properly, and he watched as Goinda tried to force it into the bag. Despite himself, he found her determination impressive. He silently cheered, for her and for his bag. Looking at the star-shaped ball, he wondered what kind of food it was. After thinking for a moment, he decided it had to be a cookie. That thought made him admire her cooking even more. He briefly imagined her in the kitchen before snapping back to reality. His focus returned to his bag, which was clearly suffering as Goinda kept pulling and pushing. She truly believed it would fit, if she tried hard enough. Hirano grew worried. He needed that bag. Finally, Goinda stopped. Relief washed over him, until he realized she was simply thinking of another idea. She pulled all his books out and wrapped them around the star-shaped cookie using a rubber band, tightening everything together to force it to fit. Hirano watched nervously. Then an idea struck him. If she removed the spikes, the books would fit easily. The thought made him feel oddly guilty, as if worrying about what the cookie was going through. Suddenly, snap! The rubber band broke and hit Goinda square on the forehead. Hirano gasped and ducked down, hoping she hadn't noticed him. His chest tightened with worry. Tears welled up in her eyes. A small bruise formed on her forehead. When he peeked inside the classroom again, he saw her crying. He stepped in carefully, wanting to comfort her. Before he could say anything, Kokuru Goinda ran out of the classroom. Hirano stood there in shock. It was the first time he had ever seen a girl cry like that. He had no idea what to do. After a moment, he realized there was only one thing he could do. He ate the cookies. When Hirano bit into one of the spikes on the ball, a packet of cookies suddenly fell out. His face burned with embarrassment. He felt foolish for thinking the spikes were edible. It took him a moment to realize what had really happened. A girl had given him cookies. Only then did he think he should feel more excited. After school, Hirano stood near the shoe racks with his friend, who was trying to talk to a girl. When she rejected him and walked away, she noticed Hirano and stopped. "Hey, what about those cookies you got?" she asked. Hirano bowed slightly. "They were delicious," he replied. To his shock, she asked for his phone number. Nervous but excited, Hirano gave it to her. She quickly entered her number into his phone and left. Hirano stared at her name on his screen, smiling. The next morning, he sat in class feeling confused as he tried to understand girls. Yesterday was the first time a girl had ever approached him and asked for his number. Now he had a girl's contact saved in his phone. Even if this was normal for girls, he couldn't help feeling happy. Just the day before, his friend had teased him for not having any girl's contact info, forcing him to pretend his mother's name was a girl's. Thinking about it made him smile again. Suddenly, a loud phone notification rang out. Everyone turned to look. His friend checked his phone and muttered that a senior had messaged him, warning him not to reply late. Hirano's heart jumped. What if I make a senior angry too? He quickly calmed himself. That would never happen. No senior would text me. At that moment, his own phone dinged. He nearly dropped it. Holding his breath, he opened the message. It was from Aiko. His eyes widened when he saw the bold photo she had sent, asking what he thought of it. Hirano's face turned bright red. He tried to reply that it was unclear, but autocorrect changed his message to cleavage. Before he could fix it, Aiko read it. "That was my elbow," she replied. Her friends burst out laughing, teasing him nonstop. They showed the phone to Kokuru Goinda, saying, "That's why she likes him." Before they could continue, Goinda snatched the phone from Aiko. "Stop teasing him," she said coldly. She walked away. Her friends exchanged nervous looks, unsettled by the expression on her face. They whispered that maybe Goinda was the reason people avoided them. Later, as Goinda walked down the hallway, she peeked into Hirano's classroom and saw his friends teasing him. She didn't go in. Instead, she stopped to drink water. Soon after, Hirano arrived at the same spot. He didn't notice her at first. When he looked up mid-sip, he found Goinda standing right beside him. "You idiot," she said flatly. Then she walked away, leaving the water running. Hirano stood there in shock. Girls are such a mystery, he thought. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps more than you think. And if you'd like to support me further, consider joining my Patreon. I'm not making much from the channel at the moment, so every bit of support truly means a lot. You'll get ad-free videos and shoutouts as a thank you for helping me keep this going. Now, back to the video. Back in class, Goinda's words kept bouncing around in his head. Finally, he told his friends what happened, leaving out her name. When they pushed for details, he only said it was a senior. He guarded Goinda's identity like a secret agent, unable to say her name out loud. His friends asked if he had upset her, but he quickly denied it. They then told him to imitate how she called him an idiot. When he did, they cheered. "That's a good sign," they said. Girls usually say that when they like someone. Hirano was still confused as they explained that when a girl says she doesn't like someone, it often means the opposite. One classmate began praising Eugene, the class's self-proclaimed love expert. Hirano blushed. When his friend said he needed to confess, he hesitated, until one friend grabbed his hand and asked, "Do you want a girlfriend?" Hirano admitted that he did. His friend handed him a piece of paper, a love ticket. It asked the other person to meet behind the gym after school to talk about something important. They cheered him on, wishing him luck. Hirano wasn't convinced. That night at home, he kept thinking about it. He decided he wouldn't confess. The situation felt too confusing. His father, Bonsaku Hirano, noticed his mood and asked if something was wrong. Hirano said it was nothing. His father smiled and said, "It's better to regret trying than to regret doing nothing. If something bothers you, the answer is inside it." Hirano said nothing and went to his room. He couldn't sleep. The next morning, he arrived at school very early. The PE teacher greeted him, surprised he was earlier than even the morning trainees. Hirano said he hadn't slept well. The teacher suggested he take a nap in the classroom. As Hirano walked down the hallway, he noticed a teddy bear on the ground. It belonged to Goinda. She had dropped it the day before and looked sad about it. That morning, Goinda arrived at school looking unusually quiet. Her friends noticed, but she only sighed. At the shoe racks, one of them pointed out that her bear was in her locker. Inside, they found it neatly placed on a tissue. While her friends talked about how kind the person must be, Goinda quietly picked up a note hidden behind the bear. She froze as she read it. Her friends kept chatting, unaware. Later that day, behind the gym, Bonsuke Hirano paced back and forth nervously. When Kokuru Goinda arrived, she also looked uneasy as she walked toward him. Hirano, however, was completely panicking. His hands shook. His mind went blank. Simple words refused to come out. At that moment, Hirano began to wonder if Goinda calling him stupid was really a good sign. After giving himself a silent pep talk, he finally asked her, "Do you want to date someone?" Goinda seemed amused. She squeezed his cheeks affectionately and called him stupid again. This time, Hirano was sure it was a good sign. Relieved, he slumped forward, finally giving in to exhaustion and falling asleep. When Hirano woke up, he realized he was staring at the girl of his dreams. Goinda was looking down at him. Panicking, he scrambled away and began apologizing, embarrassed for fainting, especially since he had called her over himself. Once he confirmed he could stand, Goinda brushed off her clothes and walked away. Hirano tried to say something proper, but could only manage a weak greeting. Goinda thought her chest had helped protect him when he fell, but she wondered if a slightly bigger chest might have prevented the injury entirely. She shared her thoughts with her friends, who were surprised but offered suggestions, including asking her boyfriend for help. Goinda wasn't sure about this, but she listened as her friends mentioned old methods. Since she didn't have a boyfriend, one friend offered to help her, and another joined in. After trying their technique with no result, they decided to take a photo instead. Meanwhile, Hirano sat in class, trying to remember what had happened when he fainted. He vaguely recalled something soft, but wasn't sure if it was real or his imagination. He was still lost in the happiness of that moment when he received a text from Aiko. Concerned, he opened it and found 2 pictures of Goinda with her friends. They asked him if he noticed anything different. Hirano replied that it felt like the classroom temperature had risen slightly. Aiko laughed loudly, clearly enjoying his discomfort. Just then, Goinda entered the classroom and peeked at Hirano's phone screen, reading her friend's bold messages. She was ready to confront Aiko, who quickly apologized, saying she couldn't help but question him. Aiko explained she just wanted a third opinion to see if their method worked. Hirano struggled, unsure whether to stare or act normally. He kept looking at his screen and shaking his head, worrying his friends. The next day, Goinda and her friends invited Hirano and his friends to their club. When Hirano entered with his friends, one of Goinda's friends thanked them for coming since the club was short-staffed. One of Hirano's friends immediately joked that he was so excited he hadn't even napped in class. Aiko laughed and reminded him not to nap during first-year classes. Hirano's friend noticed that he was still standing outside and asked him what he was doing. Hirano shrugged and said it was nothing. Inside, Hirano was surprised to see that the club room looked more like a girl's bedroom. Nervous, he turned away when he saw Goinda, remembering how he had fallen asleep on her and secretly saved one of her pictures. Feeling awkward, he avoided her and moved further into the room. Noticing his discomfort, his friend reassured him that he felt the same and hadn't been able to nap properly since finding out about the club. The girls laughed at their nervousness and changed the topic, asking what game they wanted to play. Before they could decide, Aiko brought out small sticks with writing on them. Hirano's friend recognized it as the king game. They discussed how it was usually played at parties because it was bold. They worried it might be immoral or forbidden at school, but eventually realized the girls were probably testing them. Relieved, they understood they could play without any hidden agenda. Hirano, unaware of their discussion, suddenly agreed to play the king game with the girls. His friends were furious, feeling like he was ruining their reputation. They whispered at him to stay quiet, since the girls were testing them, and could kick him out if he spoke up. Hirano was confused. He just wanted to try the game and had no hidden intentions. Their argument was interrupted when Aiko happily announced that they would play the king game and started explaining the rules. Aiko explained the rules of the game. There were 4 rules. 1. The king and the subjects would be chosen by numbers from 1 to 5. 2. The king could choose the subjects by their numbers and give them one order. 3. The king's orders were final. 4. If a king gave a vulgar or inappropriate order, they would be eliminated. The boys felt relieved. It wasn't a trap. Eugene, however, was already thinking about quitting, surprising everyone because he had been the most excited. The game started, and Goinda became the first king. She ordered her subjects to act as her chair and happily sat on their backs. Eugene worried that it might be a crude order, but no one seemed to care. Next, Aiko became king and made her subject thumb wrestle. Everyone watched as she played with one of the boys, making Hirano feel a strange flutter in his chest. Then it was Eugene's turn. He prayed to be king and cheered when he finally got the stick. But he was a little disappointed. He could only give orders to his subjects, no matter how bold. Hirano then got a turn and quietly asked numbers 1 and 6 to whisper the name of the person they liked. This made both Goinda and him nervous because they were the subjects. Everyone else got excited, curious about each other's crushes. Goinda leaned closer to Hirano, making him even more nervous. She blew air into his ear, which made his heart race. His friends wanted to know who she liked, but Hirano couldn't tell because Goinda hadn't revealed her secret. The next day at school, Aiko's friends cornered her in the club room, surprised that she hadn't shared her crush's name. Leaning closer, Aiko reminded her of the king's order and announced they would play another round without waiting for her reply. Aiko tossed her phone to a friend, asking him to contact Hirano immediately. But before he could, Goinda almost attacked him, trying to snatch the phone. Aiko was surprised by Goinda's anger and quickly withdrew the order. Instead, Aiko suggested a new task. Goinda would have to walk around the first-year floor and tell the first person who approached her the name of her crush. If no one came, she wouldn't be forced again. Soon, Goinda prepared to run around the first-year floor. Her friends weren't happy with her outfit. They thought it made her look intimidating and that no one would approach her. Aiko explained that Goinda wasn't trying to look that way, and together they watched as their friend got ready. Meanwhile, in the first classroom, Eugene couldn't stop talking about the club visit. His friends were getting annoyed because he wouldn't stop. Eugene kept going on about the comfy sofa in the club room. What he liked most was how the 3 seniors sat on it with their legs crossed. One of his friends finally admitted that he also struggled to keep his eyes off them, pretending to wipe imaginary sweat from his brow. Eugene said he barely kept himself calm too. But his friends didn't agree. Then, they suddenly turned to Hirano. "Did you get a good look at Goinda?" they asked. Eugene muttered, wishing he could get a better view of her legs if she had kept them crossed. Another friend immediately called Eugene out for his wild thoughts. Eugene didn't mind at all. Hirano, feeling flustered, finally spoke up. "Please don't talk about Goinda like that," he said politely. Suddenly, he realized both his friends were staring at him. Embarrassed, he quickly ran out of the room. As he hurried down the corridor, he immediately regretted his outburst, remembering that Eugene usually just laughs things off. But then he noticed Kokuru Goinda walking carefully down the hallway, as if she was playing some kind of game. Nervously, Hirano called her name. She sighed loudly in annoyance, and he instantly regretted speaking. Feeling awkward, he quietly asked her to make sure she was properly covered since she was leaning against the wall. Without a word, Goinda stood up, adjusted her clothes, and nodded at him. Hirano quickly apologized, realizing his words might have come out wrong. Just as he turned to walk away, Goinda suddenly grabbed his hand, pulled him toward her, and pressed him against the wall. She leaned close, thinking about what her friends had said about round two. Looking at Hirano, she simply said his name and walked away, leaving him stunned. He slumped against the wall, trying to calm his racing heartbeat. Later, when he told his friends what had happened, Eugene immediately said, "She must be really angry with you." When Goinda returned to her friends, they eagerly asked about her mission. To their surprise, she just asked them if they could see her undergarments. The next day, Aiko, in a playful mood, lifted Kokuru Goinda's skirt, only to find that she was wearing shorts today. Before Goinda could react, another friend repeated the action, teasing Aiko by lifting her skirt and noticing that she was also wearing shorts. Embarrassed, Aiko blushed and quickly explained that she had checked after asking about their underwear the day before. Her friend laughed at her reaction but stopped teasing when Aiko revealed she was wearing cute underwear today. Aiko hurriedly said it wasn't good and warned that if anyone saw, it could cause trouble. Hirano, still lost in thought about Goinda's sweet voice, accidentally stumbled upon the girls arguing about their shorts. One of them even surprised him by showing her own panties before casually walking back to her friends. Aiko proudly displayed her shorts, asking for Goinda's approval. The girls continued their playful debate, with Aiko defending her shorts while her friend insisted they weren't cute. She even tried to convince her friend how great she would look in shorts, but the other just accused her of trickery. All three turned toward Hirano, asking his opinion. Nervously, he replied that it was all a bit too much for him. Eventually, the girls returned to the clubroom. Goinda immediately removed her shorts, saying she was insulted by them, and Aiko followed, claiming nothing had changed because of them. Hirano's friends found him sitting on the floor, with his face hidden, worried that he was overwhelmed by everything. Eventually, he ended up in the infirmary, where he checked his temperature and found it normal. He thought about Goinda, but noticed his friends were still there. Concerned, they offered to take him home, but he refused, saying his parents would pick him up. After they left, the nurse informed him that his parents would be a little late and suggested he rest. She also recommended changing into gym clothes if he felt sweaty. Lying alone on the bed, Hirano realized he must have passed out while changing. Feeling a bit lonely in his condition, he accidentally called out Kokuru Goinda's name. Shocked by his own action, Hirano quickly covered his mouth, relieved that no one had heard him. Just then, the curtains were pulled aside, and Kokuru Goinda peeked at his bed. Hirano instantly closed his eyes, pretending to be asleep, feeling incredibly embarrassed. Even with his eyes closed, he was stunned to feel Goinda climb onto the bed. His first thought was that she was planning to sleep next to him. He lay there idly, thinking this must be a dream. But when he felt her cold hands on his forehead, he realized it was happening in real life. The situation was enough to freak him out, but he kept his eyes closed, doing his best to pretend to be asleep. Hirano sighed deeply when Goinda finally left. After a moment, he felt slightly disappointed. Usually, people would stay longer to take care of him. Just then, he heard a noise and was surprised, thinking Goinda might be taking her clothes off. His heart began racing as he wondered what she was up to, but then he heard her say that she needed to warm him up. He began to panic, not knowing what would happen next. Quickly, he sat up in bed, wanting to stop her. But when he looked closer, he was shocked to see her grinding something like a professional pharmacist. The sight confused him even more, because it was entirely different from what he had imagined. Not realizing that she was simply putting on an apron in preparation, Hirano silently and nervously watched Kokuru Goinda, feeling completely confused and unsure about why she seemed to be preparing medicine specifically for him. His worry and anxiety grew steadily as he observed her carefully take a small sip of the drink, and his imagination immediately ran wild, leading him to become convinced, without any real proof, that she might actually be trying to poison him. His fear and unease intensified even further when, after taking that small sip, she promptly spit out the medicine, seemingly confirming, in Hirano's mind, that the taste was far too bitter and possibly dangerous. When Goinda eventually returned to his room, Hirano quickly and somewhat clumsily pretended to be asleep, hoping that by doing so he could somehow avoid or escape from the uncomfortable situation entirely. However, Goinda was not so easily deterred and refused to let him escape in this way. She climbed carefully onto his bed and with a gentle and almost motherly gesture squeezed his cheeks softly to encourage him to open his mouth, showing clear and genuine concern for his well-being. For a brief moment, Hirano considered resisting her actions, debating whether to pull away, but he immediately froze and hesitated when he realized that resisting might result in an indirect awkward kiss. When Hirano eventually woke up again later, he was genuinely surprised and slightly relieved to discover that he no longer had a fever. Rolling carefully to the other side of the bed, he reflected on the strange and unsettling dream he had just experienced and was even more shocked, his heart skipping a beat, when he saw Goinda lying calmly and peacefully on the bed right next to him.
Please,
Subscribe.
I need this. My mom is kind of homeless.